All systems go. Clear for liftoff. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo. Got a special edition. It is the Monday Christmas holiday 3-game NFL slate. We're going to talk through the 3 games. Going to bring it up with our projections, go with our partner, the Solver, to break it all down for you from a 3-game slate perspective. We will have a Showdown slate segment at the end, talking about the really good game Monday night. We've got Baltimore, San Francisco. That's going to be an awesome one. Before we get into it, got my guy Hoop here with me. This won't be, it's obviously not a live show. We don't have that set up for this one. So the way we're going to do it is go through and just do it on this show and record it, go through everything else. But do want to still remind you guys of some things out there watching this on playback. First off, Drafters brought back the best ball format for the playoffs. Total points. It's awesome. So if you guys aren't a member at Drafters yet, you can go check them out. Use the promo code SHIPIT. Gets you a 100% deposit bonus up to your first $100. They've got the big $20 with $50K up top. Even if you just want to buy one, get one free, put your $20 on, use that promo code SHIPIT. You'll get a second one for free. Get into 2. We're going to have some shows covering it this week. And then if you want to get over to SHIPIT Nation, you can still use our promo code Mayo with our guy Mayo's got his code there. Gets you 10% off. Gets you 10% off the ability of any monthly, 6-month, or annual plan. But if you did want to try out the weekly this week, you don't need the code. You can just hop over there and get in for the week. Lots going on, obviously, with this slate at hand, but all the other stuff, NBA, et cetera, et cetera. Hoop, bring you in, man. How you doing this one? Let's get into it.
Yeah, 3-game slate, solid. I mean, big prize pools. I mean, DraftKings, I believe it's a milli up top. So, I mean, there's a lot to like about this, and some solid games, some solid teams. And it all kind of comes to a boiling point for the night game. The Ravens and the 49ers, the 2 number 1 seeds in the AFC and the NFC. That one's going to be a banger. 49ers favored by 5.5, 6. I mean, we're recording this on Saturday. Could have changed, at the time you're listening to this, but it shouldn't have been by too much. But that's a wild number for 2 of the best teams, essentially, in the NFL. So looking forward to breaking down this slate. We'll have all our content, depending on when you're listening to this, up at shipitnation.com for the slate, up early, so you're able to get in there and digest it all.
Yeah, and real quick, too, just one last thing I want to show you guys here, just we'll bring it up, but the Drive for 5 is on. I'm not sure if you can see this one, but if you guys do, got to just about 4.94K subscribers, trying to hit 5,000 by the end of the year. Our goal was Christmas, so you're watching this for the Christmas Day slate, but just to bring it up, if you guys haven't yet subscribed to our channel, please do so. It's free. It's easy to do. We keep all of our shows for free. We've got all of our shows here segmented out. You can check them by playlist, go by sport. You can subscribe that way. You can go check out all the live ones for upcoming, popular, oldest. We've got some videos we did with our guy D-Dry winning the $1 million. We've got some of our launch shows. If you're curious what our NBA product is all about, there's a lot over there you can check out. It takes 2 seconds and it's free to do. If you want to get over to shipitnation.com, just go over there now. Even if you don't want to sign up for a membership right now, you can sign up for the mini course for Showdown. Like I said, we'll have that segment at the end covering things for the Baltimore Ravens, San Francisco 49ers slate. But if you want to get that 45-minute course, it's just an email, no credit card information required, nothing like that at all. Hoop, I am going to flip it over now. I'm going to go over to the slate for Monday here. I just want to see 3-gamer for Monday. We got it. Pop it over here to our partner at the Solver. And we've got them all here, right? So it is a similar setup to what I call, as you guys all make fun of me for, American Thanksgiving, because I'm Canadian, but I love that day. Love that slate. It's very similar, right? We have a segmented slate where it's one game, then another opportunity for late swap and things like that can come into effect. But give me your first thoughts on this one, Hoop, because I was talking with Mayo about it a little bit on our show the other day, and we talked through, like, again, we know the game at the end of the day is the most anticipated. People are talking Super Bowl preview, all these other things. Sure, one of those teams will find a way to mess it up well before the Super Bowl ever gets there. But even like the division games of the other two, and it's the Mahomes, Kelsey's at home. It's Hurts and what they've been doing over there at home against the Giants team and the fun around DeVito. So what's your first take on this slate, grand scheme overview?
Yeah, I mean, so one piece of news, again, depends on when you're watching that. Or two pieces of news that are important. Josh Jacobs, questionable. He was a limited participant on Friday. Again, we're recording this on Saturday. Would kind of need that news. And then another piece of news that's pretty important, I think, is the Chiefs running back, where McKinnon's questionable and Edwards-Helaire. And as of Friday, neither of them have practiced. So it could be a one-man backfield in Pacheco, which makes it pretty interesting. That game is 1 Eastern, so it's the first game on the slate. So we should have the news at that point. But that's, two pieces of information that's very important. And then how you handle these potential blowout spots. The Chiefs are favored by 10. The Eagles are favored by 13.5. It's one of those for the Eagles. It's one of those classic just bounce back spots. And we've talked about these spots all season long. Eagles coming off, I believe, 3 losses in a row. This is the get right spot. I mean, unfortunately for the Giants, the Eagles are going to be hungry and they're going to want to right the ship. So I think it's a really, really bad spot for the Giants, which we'll talk about when we get to that game, that position. And then, it all culminates with that Ravens 49ers game, where a lot of people are going to want to be on that one. But the problem is, on the Ravens side, it's like, man, they're always going to be a tough team to look to get exposure to, because it's, Lamar Jackson, a few different running backs that can get the ball, Zay Flowers. Are you excited to play him? Odell Beckham, likely, that sort of thing. So I think when it's all said and done, I mean, it's going to be a lot of 49ers that people end up getting to, but we'll see. We'll break it all down. Yeah,
just looking at our projections and stuff too, we're going to go position by position, because then we can talk through kind of how it relates to the slate. Like you mentioned it right here, when you've got Jalen Hurts at 7,600, but Patrick Mahomes $100 less, Lamar Jackson $200 less. Like, you just sort it by price. I had it by value, but just to show it, that's going to sort of frame things up for how you go about the slate. And then you mentioned it too. Obviously, if you've got McKinnon out or something like that, and then Pacheco is going to become extremely popular, and you'll see more Jalen Hurts lineups where you can fit in Pacheco as the KC piece and then do something else there. But one thing I will say, Hoop, and just to segue it in, I just don't see how people get to Lamar very much here, and maybe even Mahomes. I always say never Mahomes. That's a main slate thing. Obviously, when we get shorter slates, it's kind of intriguing, but look at the value. This is no different anywhere you go around the industry. Hurts is going to pop for good reason, like crazy. He gets those 1-yard touchdown pushes and shoves, whatever you want to call it. But Purdy is another good value, and he's below all of them. So it really does look like it's going to be Hurts, Purdy, nothing really on these bottom two guys. And then I guess Mahomes and Lamar will get some because it gets spread out, but they would have to be squeezed at least a little bit here, you would think. What's your take on this quarterback position?
Yeah, I think Lamar gets squeezed a lot, because it's like, again, for the reasons I just mentioned, like, who do you want to play him with? It's just not comfortable. And people are going to want to pair their quarterbacks. It's just not a comfortable pairing wherever you look. I mean, it's, Zay Flowers, Odell. The natural pairing will be Isaiah Likely, but he's the one that gets squeezed the most just because of how people want to build their teams. The one thing that definitely stands out to me is you probably need a big boy score from this position today. You have 4 guys, I think, that can get up there. You have Hurts, you have Mahomes, you have Lamar Jackson, you have Brock Purdy. So you're going to need a score. You're going to need probably 25 plus out of this position to be enough to get the job done. Patrick Mahomes, I think there is a case to be made for him today on the slate, but still, even if you want the 25, he just hasn't gotten it done. And they have Pacheco back, and they're favored by 10. So, for me, there's 2 clear plays at the position that I want to get really overweight on, Hurts and Purdy. Yeah. This is a slate where I just don't play those cheap guys, to be honest. And they'll get they'll be low on, but they will get a little bit of ownership. But in my head, if I think they can't be the guy, I'm crossing off a big chunk of teams that will play those guys. There's a 3-game slate. They will get some ownership. But I think this is a slate where at quarterback, you need the big boy scores. So I'm going to focus on the guys that can get those big boy scores. And I think Lamar Jackson's the lowest owned. I think Jalen Hurts is the highest owned. But to me, man, this is a spot I think the Eagles put up a big number, and they just beat the shit out of the Giants today, or on the slate.
On the slate, yeah. So sure, that's a good call there. I think one of the other things too is we always do it when we do the position by position for the shorter slates. I like it because you can get slate dynamics as well. Look, like at running back, of course, we're going to get to McCaffrey when we get there in a second, but just after that, price drops off a cliff. And it's not like I think people are going to be super interested in a guy like Barkley when they're going up for McCaffrey or down for Pacheco or Swift or some of those other guys. You go to wide receiver, It's AJ Brown. You can fit Debo kind of in there, but like Devontae at 7,300, like everyone here, very affordable. And there's cheap options to go to as well. Kelsey then falls off a cliff. Defense, always cheap. Eagles being the most expensive. So you can easily fit, to your original point where I'm going with this, on the Aiden O'Connells and Tommy DeVitos. It's not like they get you a whole lot more than you can just get those points at another position. And you probably need, like you said, the 25 to 28 plus, maybe 30 plus points out of these guys. The interesting point was the Never Mahomes one is he did get it back here against the Chargers, but beside that, not very many over 21 at all. So it just has not been the case. And there is some interesting points to this on these two guys here, because with Mahomes and Lamar, they're squeezed in between the other two good plays, like you talked about, Hurts and Purdy. Forget these guys at the bottom for a second. Mahomes, if Pacheco becomes the guy, which it could happen with these injuries and stuff like that, the passing attack with Kansas City is actually the leverage. And would it surprise anyone if Mahomes comes out and has a big game on Christmas Day, during the holiday season, while everybody's watching from home, all that stuff? You could definitely see that. So I don't care as much about the box scores and the Never Mahomes stuff that I always say, because it's hard to get them right. It's a 3-game slate. It's hard to get Lamar right. What are you picking? Zay Flowers, Bateman, Likely, Beckham Jr., like some of those running backs, hard to get him right. Hurts, you could still make the case. There's multiple running backs. There's lots of receivers, tight ends, things. It's still tougher. And then Purdy's the one you feel safer with, but it's expensive. CMC, Debo, Ayuk, all, I believe, over 7K on this list. 6,700. You get as cheap as for Ayuk. Yes, Kittle is 5,500, but for the position, that's the second highest there. So I think these guys get squeezed a little. Also, one last thing I'll say, Lamar Jackson versus NFC teams has actually been a thing. He's been showing up. I said it on our earlier show this week when we did the 2-game slate for Saturday. I actually like the Ravens +6 here, and it's not just the homer effect of me being a Ravens fan. I think this is when the Ravens show up, and then I think they'll disappear later on. I've been here too many times to see this happen, so I think it's going to be a thing where they're in the game, they're involved, they're ahead, and it's whatever Brock Purdy does down the stretch to get him back in it if he can. If not, Ravens win. They claim that they're the spot, and then they fail later on in the season. That's just how I've seen it play out. But anything else you want to add at the quarterback position based on any of that stuff, I really just am interested in those top 4. If I had to pick a cheap guy, it would be DeVito just for the stack options, but I don't really love those two cheap guys at all.
Yeah, yeah, it's good. Just going to be the main guys for me. Again, I think you need a big score. You have 4 guys that can put up the big scores at varying ownership. Again, it's going to be Hurts and Purdy that get the ownership. But yeah, I definitely want to try to get some Mahomes and Lamar Jackson as well. And I at this point, we're still a couple days out. I'll likely just be full fading the other two.
Yeah, and I can see where that comes from. I think the other thing too is like you say, like, okay, I guess with Aiden O'Connell, real quick, and then we're going to go to this running back position. Like you could say, okay, Adams would drag him along. It just hasn't been there, so it's tough to really see that. You could still get a piece of these guys through their plays. Like you could play a Devontae Adams here if you want at 7,300 as a one-off. Hope that he collects 8 for 80, and if he doesn't get in the box, that's still a pretty good score. 8 for 80 at 7,300, you could get away with that. Some of the other guys as well, but like these Slaytons and Wandales, I think even if you said like, well, I'll just stack up DeVito with Wandale and Slayton and I can fit whoever I want. Well, true. What do you think all those lineups look like anyway? And then not only do you need that to happen, you need the other big boy quarterbacks to fail. You need the other stuff to come through for you, and you need to somehow get unique on this slate as well, which is a shorter slate. So I just don't see it personally for me for there. Let's move on. Let's go to these running backs, and it starts at the top, very obvious, with Christian McCaffrey. We watched him put up those 20 to, I mean, shit, if you want to go back to it here, Hoop, McCaffrey's like what we could say about Mahomes at the previous position. It was a bunch of 20s. You're like, he's going to have that big boy game soon. And then last week he had it 44.7, absolutely crushed, 9,500, but we already did the dynamics of the slate. We're still very affordable at this price tag. Talk to me about CMC, where he stands for you on this slate, and then other running backs that you might like.
On a 3-game slate, I mean, you just got to take your 20 with the 40-point upside and find a way to make it work in as many lineups as possible. Now, it could be challenging on the slate. I haven't built teams at this point, but we are lacking value. And I just ran 150, same setup you have here, with on the solver with the SHIPIT Nation projections. And what happens when you just naturally run these teams is you do get the high-end quarterbacks. You do get McCaffrey, and then you get to wide receiver. Take a guess what it's doing at wide receiver. You're playing a bunch of cheap-ass dudes. You're playing a bunch of cheap guys and taking a ton of risks. That's how a lot of people will be building their teams. A high-end quarterback, Christian McCaffrey, and a bunch of punt wide receivers. So that is going to be the popular type build. But, man, I have to be on McCaffrey in a big way. I mean, it's just on a 3-game slate, his workload. They're not mixing anyone else in. This is a game it's a statement game for them. They're going to want to win this. So many different ways to get there. You can get there with the touchdowns. You can get there with the receptions. You can get there if they're in the lead. You can get there if they're trailing. Just a foolproof play in on him in a big way. Now, Pacheco would be the number 2 guy if McKinnon and CAH are ruled out. He's probably the number 2 guy regardless. One guy, though, that I do want exposure to is DeAndre Swift. I want to be on the Eagles in a big, big way today. I think on the slate, I think the Eagles take care of business against the Giants. I think they put up a big boy score. Want to be in on him. And then we got to see on Josh Jacobs. If he is out, Zamir White at 5K, it's not a cheap price tag. I mean, at 5K, he's still got to go out there and do something. I mean, he's only $1,400 cheaper than Pacheco, but he would be a priority play. They used him a lot in that last game that Jacobs missed. He got 17 carries and 3 receptions. So he will be a big part of what they do if Jacobs is out. So we need that news. And by the time you're watching this, we might already have the news. So you can do what you need to with that information. But McCaffrey, Pacheco, Swift, potentially Zamir White. That's kind of where I'm looking at this position.
Yeah, just real quick note, because you said it, so I'll bring it up. Like, again, we're on the running back position.
Yeah, that's the common build right there. That has to be the common build.
Yeah, and that's what I'm seeing. So, this is 5K left. I love McCaffrey, too. I do worry. Like I said, one thing is Baltimore defense is for real. So, that can still lead to a ton of checkdowns. I'm not saying, he's getting 20. We know this. Could that limit him to that? The challenge is it's still hard to go find the points elsewhere and feel safe with them. Yeah. But I guess just to flip this quickly, this is 5K left with 3 positions, including the defense. Let me just scrap this for a second and see what the next version of kind of a pay up looks like. And I'll go to likely here, and I'll still keep Pacheco. I mean, what one would you like better? So going back to that build, I know you probably didn't memorize it, but it was Hurts with CMC.
Yeah, I know exactly what it was. Yeah. And then the 2 Giants guys and Odell Beckham. I mean, I need Eagles exposure. If I'm building one team, it has to have so you put in Swift. Okay. Probably the other route still. Yeah. But again, this will be different though. This is going to be different than what people do because McCaffrey's going to be very, very popular. And the natural way to go about doing this is pay up at quarterback, pay up with McCaffrey, and then a bunch of cheap wide receivers. So guys like Debo, squeezed a little bit. Guys like Ayuk squeezed a little bit. They just have to be. I mean, they just have to be the way the slate's shaping up. And Rice is the one that's going to get the ownership at 6,500 at wide receiver.
Yeah, and the other thing about this build is, as much as I love it, because I love good correlation and stuff that makes sense. You see, okay, Purdy, Samuel, Ayuk, and I'm leveraging CMC. Love it. Running it back instead of a cheap Beckham or Bateman or something like that. In our projections, they like Beckham right now. You can get likely in there. That's fine. Not like he'll be, low owned just to say it. Okay, that makes sense. All right, I got a secondary stack in there where if I'm not playing Hurts, maybe I get some Swift. Pacheco's just a quote-unquote lock because people like him to spot. That's how people view it, not what I'm saying. But people will just plug that in because I'm not getting to Mahomes. I'm not getting Rice here, so it looks like this. But I will say this, Hoop, this is a lot of what-ifs and maybes. Purdy with Samuel and Ayuk, and it's not CMC. Swift needs to come through, but what about Hurts when you get to that 1-yard line? Pacheco, but he's super chalk. There's other places that you can go. Wandale, typically just a PPR safety type guy. Again, this is a lot of maybes more than likelies, if you will. So I know the other lineup has a lot more safety to it, but also feels like you're risking a lot less as long as your wide receivers get their cheap PPR points, but some of them are even carrying over to be the same thing. So I do agree with you on that. As far as the rest of the position goes, Barkley is for sure getting squeezed here, to nothing, because Pacheco, Swift, when they're not playing Hurts or even with Hurts, McCaffrey, obvious. Gus Edwards, I don't really love the matchup, but obviously when you have a guy like Keaton Mitchell, who it sucks to say, but obviously out for the season with that injury. Hate to see that, but you get a guy like Gus Edwards, maybe more like a FanDuel spot. Obviously, touchdowns still count and are in play here on DraftKings, but like he could get a ground and pound type style here, and just when they get close, he ends up getting a couple touchdowns. Again, don't feel safe about it, but could happen. After that, though, things just drop off a cliff. I guess one last take is I think Jacobs was back at practice or is expected to be, and they think that he's going to be okay. We'll wait and see. But if Jacobs is in at 6,300, where are you standing with him? Because he's $100 less than Pacheco on the opposite side of that game.
Yeah, I think I prefer Pacheco and Swift to be honest with you. I have to get Eagles exposure. We'll talk about it when we get to wide receiver. It's going to be tough. Like AJ Brown's 8,500. Like if you want to play AJ Brown, like if you're playing Hurts and AJ Brown, you're probably out on a guy like McCaffrey. It's going to be hard. Yeah, if you put him in, yeah, you're done. You can't do it. So it's AJ Brown's going to get squeezed. So I want to find a way to get to a guy like AJ Brown. I want all these Eagles guys. Again, I think they put up a big score. I think they put up a really big score against the Giants. So if I have to make sacrifices elsewhere, that's fine. But I don't anticipate getting a lot of Josh Jacobs regardless.
What about one more thing? The running joke is obviously Boston Scott versus the Giants. He just crushes. Can't really get to that. The guy's been getting no work. If they just do it to troll, then fine. But there has been at least a little bit of work there for Gainwell throughout. He's had some of these I just don't know if it's enough.
Yeah, just tough with these prices, man. Like they just don't bring down these running backs enough. Like he should be like
4K.
I would have loved if they put him at like 3,700 or something where he probably should be on the slate. Like add some appeal to these backup running backs, especially on these smaller slates. Like bring it down a little bit because it's he'd still be low owned at 3,700, but I think it would make sense. Like at 4,800, he's too close to those other dudes. He's got to do something.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. The floor now, obviously, since I was like before last season, I think that when they changed it to 4K for the minimum price, I mean, they're not even putting Boston Scott at the minimum price. They're putting him at 4,300. So I think some people reach here. I guess, to your original point back one position, if I was reaching, I'd probably reach more at running back than at quarterback. I just think you need one of those top four guys. It's just the way it's going to shake out. But for running back, I'm not going to do it a bunch. But like you said, there's spots where you just can't get to it. And the way I'd have to look at it is like, okay, if I want Hurts and AJ Brown, plugging in McCaffrey seems impossible. Plugging in Swift at least seems possible. Yeah. But if you wanted to play for like a blowout script or something and they do just go off, I would be able to say, okay, maybe I can get to something like this to find a little more money. I find it really challenging there, but that's where I would reach at the running back position, where if somehow the Ravens can just slow down McCaffrey while 20 raw points plays at 9.5K, if that's all he could get to, that could be a little bit tougher to see on these winning or optimal lineups where you could squeak in some 10s or 12s from much cheaper prices because you need the scores at these other positions. And wide receiver, which we're about to get to, is definitely going to be one of them. When you sort it by price, you can see it's AJ Brown, drops off, 3 guys in the 7s, drops off, couple guys in the 6s, but then there's lots of options down here that I think people are going to talk themselves into and feel comfortable with it based on getting the other safety into their lineup. Yeah. So what are you doing here?
Yeah, so the field is going to be Rashee Rice and then a lot of cheap guys. That's what everyone's going to be doing. And, Rice makes a lot of sense. I mean, he's clearly building a connection with Patrick Mahomes, which is, if you're a wide receiver, that's a good spot to be. A solid connection with a guy like Patrick Mahomes. He's out on the field a ton. Totally get it. But for me personally on the side, I got to find a way to get AJ. I got to find a way to do it. And maybe it is getting less Christian McCaffrey and hope it is just the 20 fantasy point game. Like, that there's a real possibility McCaffrey goes out and gets 20 and he's not on the optimal. So again, I haven't built teams, but I know I need to get AJ Brown. I need to get these 49ers pass catchers in there. And I want some Devonta Smith as well. So maybe for me, it is less Christian McCaffrey. Again, I haven't built teams. We will see. But the dynamic of the slate and what people are going to do is spend up at quarterback, play Christian McCaffrey, and then play a bunch of cheap wide receivers. So I think one of the best ways to kind of leverage that on the slate is to play some of the higher end wide receivers. You laid out one perfect example of leverage off McCaffrey by going Purdy and the pass catchers. And then you had like likely in there, something like that on the Baltimore side. So stuff like that, I think makes a lot of sense on the slate. Anytime you know what the field's doing, which, at this point I feel very confident in, spend up at quarterback, spend up on McCaffrey, and then cheap wide receivers, the leverage points. So sign me up for AJ Brown, Debo, Ayuk, Devonta Smith at this position, getting over the field on all those guys.
Yeah, just real quick, just show people again. This is our partner. You can do this with other optimizers as well, but just to bring it up, the obvious. Like, so I know some people just like, oh, I'll just X them out and see what happens or whatever. You can just do your sets or however you build by adjustments. Like, you could either just tone them down some with the boost down, but I just changed McCaffrey to 19. Just said, okay, he doesn't quite get to 20, he gets to 20, but doesn't break it. What does that do? Well, now it puts him number 5 on the list and drops him down, but I'll still get a big majority of them in my lineups. I'll just now be able to see what lineups do I have that don't have him and what do those look like, and then you can just swap it right back and you're good. You're back. But just to note, Hoop, like this looks like a common build here too, right? You see like a cash game setup that looks pretty good on paper. You're loving this. And then you can even throw Pacheco in here. And once you get one of those cheap wide receivers in, you've got Odell, you've got Slayton fits in, you've got Justin Watson, you've got Hyatt, some of these guys, Bateman. You could fit another guy in there, but with the cheaper D, which is under the average, and 2 more spots, you can make this lineup make sense too. So I do see where this feels pretty good. And when you've got Hurts, who could just dominate that quarterback position, McCaffrey, who could run away with it at running back, Pacheco, who could be the only show in town, and Rice can still get there with Pacheco. And then you just need these cheaper guys to do a few little things, and they're in really good spots. Likely, still know Mark Andrews went to the IR done, right? So we know how that shaped out. Robinson, not like they have a bunch of other bodies there, so it's kind of just somebody that can rack them up. That's what I was saying earlier. The other builds will look good and make sense, and we're going to take them on, myself included. I'm going to be building like that for tournaments, but these builds still have a lot more safety, a better projection, and you can still get different with construction and certain pieces within it. As far as the other wide receivers go, I'm going to do it by price just to get this angle on it. It looks like AJ Brown, Debo, for sure both get pretty squeezed, because I think even this time around now you're getting Ayuk for 1,000 less. I think a lot of people would just be happier to drop down to him. I think Adams doesn't get much ownership. Zay Flowers, Odell, Bateman, I like him in the Lamar builds. I think if Lamar gets there, we saw this a couple years ago in the large field Millie Makers, where everyone said, oh, just play naked Lamar or just play Lamar Andrews and that's it. But if you want to hit in some of these bigger tournaments, I mean, it's $1 million up top, a huge field that you're talking about beating on Monday. You kind of want Lamar to get all the way there, and in ways that others might not be. So again, I don't see how many people are going to have this build, but if you go Lamar and you like Zay and Beckham, you don't play likely. Let's say you play George Kittle as a way to get different there. Well, now, like Hoop says, you got to get some Philly in there. So you get DeAndre Swift, and I'll do it differently. I'll do the defense here. Look at that. I still got 6K.
Nice looking squad. Yeah, real nice squad.
But again, how comfortable do you feel Zay Flowers and Odell Beckham? You're like, and then Swift has to not get vultured. But
playing Lamar, though, if you're playing, I mean, now that you look at this a little bit, if you're going to be in on Lamar is actually a cheap stack. I mean, now that we're going through, and this is essentially kind of like a first look. I haven't looked at this slate yet. Lamar Jackson is a cheap stack. He's going to be lower owned than Purdy and Hurts. Look at his weapons: Zay Flowers, 5,500, Odell, 43. And then the likely is super cheap as well. So, Lamar Jackson is, I think, an interesting stack here because of the weapons and the price tags of those weapons.
Yeah, and look at Zay. I mean, we've done this. We've played this game before with the Drake Londons of the world, with the Garrett Wilsons of the world. Like, they're getting these scores on teams with Desmond Ridder and Zach Wilson. This is Lamar Jackson. You can make fun of him, call him a running back, whatever you want to do. It's not the homer in me sitting there saying he's great. I'm just telling you, he's better than those guys, that's for sure. And he can find these guys. He already has. You go to Beckham here, and it's not going to be anything crazy. But look, a 19, an 18, a 16, like these will play on this
winner.
slate.
That's a winner on the slate. Like that's he does that on the slate. You need him.
And you need other stuff to go your way. But this leaves 6K on the table. I just want to very quickly do this. 6K on the table. And you flip it back around. And we go to what we said earlier. And this leaves 5K. So not only do you pick up $1,000 that in that spot per player, so you're picking up $3,000 with the 3 spots left, but you also have what should be a much lower owned lineup because, well, yes, Debo might be squeezed a little bit. Likely Ayuk and Purdy are all getting played here more than Lamar, Zay Flowers, and Kittle, right? It just is.
Yeah.
And you pick up the money. So just flipping the builds, doing stuff like that, I think are little ways to do it. And yeah, this does not feel super comfortable either, but you have to know that like it is possible. I mean, he literally went down at the 1 last game, which led to a Hurts thing. I know it's insane how often they get it, but to Hoop's point, what I try to explain too, whether you like it or not, oftentimes doesn't matter. This is why people get so confused in DFS. Like, oh, I had that. There's no way that matchup could have got there, or this guy had this battle, or I didn't expect that. It doesn't even matter. It's just your lineup has to tell a story. If I don't have Hurts and I don't have AJ Brown and I don't have Goddard and I don't have Devontae Smith, but they're going to score 28 points very likely, something is wrong with my lineup. So I have to just kind of make it make sense and hope that that's the way it gets there and what is required. If it's dead and it doesn't work out, it was dead anyways. Like the lineup's already in the trash, and hopefully within your portfolio, there's another lineup there. If it's a single entry, you took your shot and it didn't work and you move on to the next slate. Hopefully it was in for an affordable amount for you and less overall, and you get to battle back on the next slate. But anything else so you want to talk about, Hoop, when it comes to wide receivers? We're not really dumpster diving here to try and pick it out. If you have some diamond in the rough out there that you like, play them, but play them enough so that it matters. Don't tell me, oh, I put Trey Tucker in one lineup, didn't get there though, but at least I got him right. That's terrible, really, just being honest. Like that strategy, you have one chance to get there with a 1% owned guy, and then he gets there and the rest of your lineup's dead. If you're going to play someone like that, get your 20 max and get 10, 15% of them, mix them into enough lineups so there's at least something in your pool, 20% maybe in 20 max for the example, so at least they're in 4 of your lineups. But Hoop, any thoughts on like the punt plays, dumpster diving in general? Anyone, your boy Hunter Renfrow, maybe that stood out? Anybody here you want to talk about?
Yeah, not much. I mean, the Giants guys, the cheap Giants guys are going to get the ownership, but it's this position, it's very important. Like what you do here is very important. And for me, I want to get exposure to the San Fran guys, and I want to get exposure to the Eagles guys. That's going to be my priority when I come here and build my teams.
Yeah, one thing I will say, I haven't I'm like Hoop. I haven't fully built anything or got to this yet. We have like 3 slates ahead of this one to keep going here. But when I do dumpster dive, one thing I will say, I'm gonna wait on this Q tag with Jennings or whatever and stuff like this and Tony. But like, I would rather dumpster dive, and even if they do get just a little bit more ownership because of this, yeah, these aren't big boy scores, but he can catch like a 60-yard touchdown. And guess who he's attached to? A guy that can absolutely throw a 60-yard touchdown, and I can feel very comfortable and safe about that. So I would rather attach some of these punt plays to really good quarterbacks that have the arm capability and the upside to actually get them there versus saying, well, I watched Jalen Hyatt before and he's had one good game all season. Like it could be him. Yeah, if it makes sense, put him in and get enough of them. But to my main point, I want guys that are attached to good quarterbacks, good spots. That's my other take.
Agree.
All right, tight end. Can move on. Kelsey, I don't remember his exact history, but I feel like it's pretty strong. Wasn't the best first game around for him, only 15 DraftKings points, but realistically, that's been the season. We pulled the game log for Mahomes, the game log for Travis Kelsey. Surprise, surprise, looks very similar, right? Those two kind of have been off a little this season. I know everyone had the takes when Taylor Swift was at the game. He crushes. I mean, that's went out the window pretty quick too. So, but this could be the slate, Hoop. This is a pay down spot for most people. On this slate, he's a pay up option. Very hard to get to if you're going any of those expensive quarterbacks like Hurts, Mahomes, or with Lamar. But at least with Mahomes, you would expect people pair him up. I don't know how popular this would be, but what's your take at tight end? This is almost the same as the Hurts, AJ Brown, McCaffrey, Mahomes, and Travis Kelsey, different positions, but it's still expensive. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the 150 I ran without changing anything. How much Kelsey do you think we get?
Man, 12%.
Didn't put anything in there. What do you say? 12? Yeah, lower. 0. I got 0 Travis Kelsey, which makes me believe. What are we showing? So we got 22. Makes me believe that 22 is even going to be a little bit lower than that. The fact that if you just run it naturally, you don't get any of this guy. I'm going to try to get some, like, I don't know. It's hard to take a big stance on Kelsey and get like way over the field. I want to try to get some. But it really hasn't been there lately. Like you said, like the connection, the thing with the homes, the fact that they're willing to win the ugly games. I just think he comes in really low on. So I do want some Kelsey, likely Goddard, Kittle. Kittle's the guy that I got a ton of. So I just ran it, and Kittle is showing up in a lot of teams. Yeah, I mean, I don't have like a strong lean. I do want Goddard a lot at 47. I'm going to continue on with my Eagles love. I want every piece of the Eagles offense today. I think they go off. Where does it go? I don't know. So I'll just take, solid pieces of all of them. Kittle, Kelsey, likely interested in all those guys. I'm going to, try to get some exposure to the top 5 showing up here on the list.
Yeah, we'll wait on the Meyer news too. I know when Mayo and I looked at this the other day, like we had some lineups where Hooper, if you just want to play him at 2,500, so be it. But let me ask you this, Hoop, because this is almost identical to the Purdy, Ayuk, Debo, Likely, Swift, and Eagles. We kept Swift and Eagles, but we swapped the rest. And instead of Purdy and instead of Ayuk and Debo with Pacheco, we now have Mahomes, Kelsey. You got to drop to Beckham. You got to play Josh Jacobs, assuming he's in on the other side. I mean, where are you at on this? Because you'd say, okay, this can leverage those Pacheco builds if Pacheco gets super popular, but where do you stand on something like this? That Purdy one to me, that just looks way better on paper.
Yeah, I mean, this will be a lower owned version for sure. Like Kelsey will be low owned. Jacobs will be low owned, I think, regardless of, his injury designation whenever we get it. Like those two are going to be like low owned type options. I think Mahomes comes in lower than Hurts and Purdy. So this is like a leverage type lineup that gets you a little bit different for sure. And I don't hate it again, because I want some Kelsey. I think Kelsey comes in, I don't know, we're showing 22. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like 13 or 14 or something percent on the slate. So
yeah, these aren't updated yet. So great call on that. Yeah. The way to get after it. You talked through tight end pretty good. We're going to go to defense in a second, but I do like to show this because more of a, learn from us. And we talk about the more you learn, the more you earn. That's what we're all about at SHIPIT Nation. You can go check it out. All of our content will be up there already when you're watching this for everything that you need over this weekend. NFL, NBA, all the other sports. If you sign up for a month using the promo code MAYO, it gets you 10% off. You do get in the Discord community. You do get the PGA education course on top of the NFL and NBA one that comes free with every membership. We just recorded that. And you will get some PGA slates. It's actually starting up in a couple weeks. So you'll get a couple PGA slates under your belt as well. So now is the time to go sign up. But just to show this, Hoop, this is how I look at it, right? 83.6 and 155. So we'll remember that for a second. 83, we'll call it 84 and 155.
I'll write it down so we don't forget.
84 and 155. You got her. Okay, so let's go back here. And then I think it was Pacheco. What was the difference maker here? Maybe it was one more. It wasn't Pacheco, sorry, it was Likely.
Yeah.
And we got about the 5K, 84 and 155. So just to give an idea, while this may feel much better on paper, there is more ownership in this lineup. So it's definitely more popular build to go this route. And the other build with Mahomes and Kelsey, who almost nobody is on, we didn't even fit in like a Watson or somebody like that, projects almost identical, but at much lower ownership. And just overall, you saw like there's multiple levers in there of like no Pacheco, but we have the passing game. No CMC. We don't even have a San Francisco guy in there yet, but there's room to fit one with 5,000 left over in ways that we can make things work. So just little things like that you're looking at, even when you're just hand building. I know everyone thinks optimizer 150. Yeah, it's important. When you're playing 150, you need it, and it makes your life a lot easier, I think. I know there's some people, our guy Double D, we always give him the shout out there hand building in the factory. But for the most part, even when you're using it just for a single entry or a quick glance, this little tidbit of information is just how I do it process-wise. Hopefully that helps some people out there. I don't have much else to add, Hoop, but real quick, one last question I have for you, and then we'll go to defense. How much Dallas Goedert was showing up in that dry run and Kittle for percentage? I know you said you were getting more Kittle, but how much of each?
Kittle, again, not changing anything, came in at 82%. So he's hitting 82% of lineups. Goddard, 35, and those were the top two. Kittle, 82, Goddard, 35%. So it is doing a lot of double tight end teams without changing much.
Yeah, so what was the Goddard number? 32 or 52?
35. 82 for Kittle, 35 for Goddard.
Okay, and yeah, you just brought up a good point, which people asked on our last 2-gamer slate. It's the same on the 3-gamer. You can definitely play two tight ends. Like, again, George Kittle is 5,500. That is a way to get a piece of that San Francisco offense. That is not $9,500 for McCaffrey. And again, obviously you want McCaffrey, but would it surprise you if McCaffrey had a touchdown and Kittle had a touchdown and Kittle's worth just the same for $4,000 less? It's definitely possible. So I do like that call out there. I like that you brought that up. Nothing else for me to add there. Defenses, I mean, little things for me, Hoop. Defenses against quarterbacks, fine. 3-gamer, definitely possible that can happen. The Ravens D could go up against Purdy here. You could have something like that. You could have the Raiders for super cheap up against Mahomes, who can make a couple mistakes but still end up winning the game. It just doesn't matter for me as much as defenses, but I think we'll see people pair up like Swift, Eagles, Pacheco, Chiefs, things like that. Anything else you have to add with defense before we go to the showdown slate?
No, fine with the Raiders. I think that's the main point here. Like, a lot of people avoid the Raiders, but 2,300, it gets you into a different, pricing range. So I'd be fine rolling them. And Mahomes has made mistakes almost every game this season, so I'm fine with that.
Yeah, and you got to set up here. These guys are still, look at the numbers.
They're playing ball. They're playing ball. I mean, their defense, what's his name? That dude's a freaking maniac.
Max Crosby is nuts.
Yeah, man. He's nuts. Absolutely nuts.
Yeah. And there was some good stuff. Obviously, the other thing, too, is remember, the Raiders see the Chiefs quite often. Like, if you watched Quarterback on Netflix, there was even situational stuff they were showing on there because Mahomes was one of the featured quarterbacks used in that, where Max Crosby was talking shit to him. Like, just again, they're talking as boys too. They respect each other in their own position and within the game and what they do, but they have some information. They got some tape both ways. So that's why I said these types of games are still intriguing, even though on paper you see, 25.75, 15.25, big time favorites for the Chiefs. You think the Raiders don't see that too? They watch all the stuff. Shit, we know guys are getting in trouble. Calvin Ridley lost the season for betting on sports. They're watching these lines and seeing these things and saying, okay, we're getting counted out. This is like a Super Bowl spot for the Raiders to come in here, and it could be closer than you think. So I got no problem finding stuff like that. Let's flip over, Hoop. Let's go to Showdown Captain Mode. We're just going to do a quick breakdown for you guys to wrap this video up. As far as the Monday night game goes, because I know many people will be with families, eating dinners, holiday friends, family get-togethers, things like that. Again, happy holidays to everybody out there from all of us at SHIPIT Nation. We appreciate you guys. If you could do us that favor, subscribe to the channel, hit that like button. That could be your gift to us. We would definitely appreciate it. It's all free to do. We keep all these shows free for you, if you will. So let's move on, Hoop. Let's go to this showdown slate. Monday night, I told you it's going to be an awesome game. I'm excited for this one. First off, let me ask you this. I asked you on the other show, but now we're live on a different one here. What do you actually think? If you just had to, right now, someone put you up and said, you got to get this right or you're done. What's the winner? What's the score? What do you think happens in this game?
You look at this, and if you were to just predict the line without seeing it, you probably would. Most people would say 49ers -3, right? I mean, somewhere in that range. Well, they're coming in -5.5, -6. So Vegas and the betting public think they're that much better than the Ravens. I'm going to lean the 49er side here for sure. Easier plays. This is a tough one, though, for Showdown, I will say, because the 49ers, if they win and put up points, like, so many guys have been the guy that you need. You know what I'm saying? It's been Purdy. It's been McCaffrey. It's been Debo. It's been Ayuk. It's been Kittle. Like, there's so many guys that can be the guys. So you almost have to spread it out at captain if you're under the mindset that the 49ers, win this game. On the Baltimore side, it's much more difficult. Is it, Lamar Jackson? They've had random running backs pop in. Odell Beckham's had a big game. Zay Flowers has had a big game. So, haven't dug super deep into this, but my initial lean would probably be to spread it out at captain. Yeah. And we just don't have a lot of plays, man. Like, you go down the list, there's not many cheap plays at all. Two pretty consolidated teams in terms of what you get. So I'd probably, initially would just be to spread it out at captain spot.
Yeah, and I'd add another thought too. This is funny because I've been making fun of this. Not you. You play these guys all the time and crush with them. But like Jalen Hurts, 17K plus. Josh Allen, 17K plus. To be honest, at least in those situations, you're like, well, look at the game. It's the Bills versus the Chargers, man. Or it's Hurts versus, who did they play the other day? It was Seattle. It's like, what I mean? They should just crush But I do think there's a chance, like you said, I think more people spread it out, and for good reason. There's lots of good options here. Could it be Debo? Yes. Could it be Lamar? Could it be Brock? Could it be Ayuk? All this stuff. But McCaffrey is even more. He's pushing 18K here. And if you're building for the San Francisco wins builds or covers builds, if you will, I'm more than fine with that, because I think at least his ownership will get somewhat kept in check, Hoop, here, even at 17.7, because of price and because of all the other options people believe to be viable, where I actually don't think it gets out of hand. So kind of the opposite effect of where I am in most of those other games, where I know it's just getting super condensed. But if you start with him, you have 6.5K. Well, go back to our optimizer projections from the other spot. You can get away just starting like this, and you still have almost 7K left. And that's with Likely and Beckham, who the projections love. And then you can move it around from there. We've got kickers at pretty fair prices here. Justin Tucker, only 5,200. Moody, only 4,600. Moody here, I'm just going to pull up his stuff. I don't see the game logs for him. Tucker, maybe this is the setup here. I know our guy Boomer is actually working on these projections as we speak, so it kind of kicked me off. But let's see if I can do this. It looks like we just got him back, so let's see. Yeah, no game logs, not showing it. So apologize for that, but just to show it, obviously very affordable to still get to McCaffrey. On the Ravens side, 16-2. I always say never Mahomes on main slates. I typically never play Lamar captain on showdown slates because, again, it just depends on the game or whoever else is in it, the price and all that. He did actually just sneak in there last time, but if you remember, Isaiah Likely was like 1 point behind him or something like that. It was very close to where he wasn't needed as well. So just to bring it up, I think I would take chances on some of the other guys like Flowers, Likely, Beckham. I would feel okay with those guys. I like the Kittles, Ayuks, Debos there. Purdy can at least spread it around, but man, it's one of those games where you'd have to imagine he throws for like 3 or 4 touchdowns. I personally don't see it against this defense. I think we could definitely see a spot where, well, 2 things, Hoop, and then I'll kick back to you. 1 is definitely see a spot where he fails, I was going to say. 2 is this game might be too high. The total might be too high at 47. I know, my thought is, to your point, if Vegas is right and the numbers are right, and it's like, why isn't it 3? Well, why is that? It's because they probably win. It could be a spot where they win like 14-7. I know that sounds wild, but it's like, this is where you can see 2 teams that often put up points, that are playing great this season, join battle to go to battle here in a game like this. And instead of seeing fireworks with the offense that you've seen all season, you see fireworks with the defense, and they both show up in that manner. And you could definitely see something like that, right? You could see a 17-10 type of game or something along those lines.
I mean, you look at the 49ers success. I mean, a lot of the recent success has been against some – I just wanted to pull this up. It's been against some pretty bad teams. Like they beat up on the Cardinals. Well, I guess they beat the hell out of the Eagles.
Eagles
Seattle,
have been giving it up all season, though.
Actually, it's been against. Actually, I take that back. It's been against pretty good teams. So, but I wouldn't be surprised in terms of the kickers. I pulled it up. Tucker's just 12, 12, 10, 11, 7, 14, 8, 8, 19. So, like his floor in the last 2 months sitting at 7, which is huge. Moody not as impressive just because they score so many damn touchdowns. He's had. Yeah, I don't like Moody all that much now that I look at this. I mean, he's had field goal attempts 1, 0, 0, 1, 2, 2, 1, 1. Like their offense is so effective. It's hard to trust him. So if you're looking at kickers, definitely Tucker over Moody in my eyes.
But I lean on the game script too. That's what I'm saying. Like I'm opposite of you. I don't give credit for any of these teams. I think Arizona sucks. I don't think Seattle's very good. Yeah. Philly, you could say what you will about them on the season, and probably going to be in the NFC Championship game, which might even be against the 49ers. But man, they got no defense all season. They literally just got beat by said team in Seattle. Tampa Bay, no good. Jacksonville, no good. These guys are beating up on bad teams, bad defenses. This is the real deal that they're going to go up against now. And I would say that's where you could see, even though they do like to go for it, as do the Ravens, you could see Moody and Tucker battle it out here a little bit as well. And last season, we did well with that. It has not worked very often this season to get these double kicker lineups. Hoop, this could absolutely be a spot just to lean on that for a final thought. Anything else for you as far as Showdown is concerned, or anything else you want to bring up? We will have you guys covered over at SHIPIT Nation. We will have the Showdown projections, ownership, and all of our cores up for Monday evening. There'll be no player pool or slate plan this one with the holidays, but everything else will be covered there. And then you can take away everything from this video. We'll also have some other stuff up in the Discord. So lots going on over at SHIPIT Nation right now. Any final takeaways on that Monday Night Football game there, Hoop?
Yeah, I mean, it should be a fun one. I mean, the two top teams right now in each conference, definitely looking forward to that. The 3-game slate should be a lot of fun. I mean, prize pools are massive. Play within your means though, because this weekend could be expensive if you don't win something. So play within your means. That's always the most important thing. Don't go overboard, because this is a weekend where there's a lot of temptation in terms of the contests and the offerings and the prize pool. So one piece of advice: play within your means. Looking forward though to all the games. Looking forward to this 3-game Christmas Day slate. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, join the nation. Speaking of offerings, like we said, I got the weekly. Gets you involved in everything. You just don't get the Discord, which the community is so huge. Biggest part of our site by far is just joining the community and getting into that Discord. But all the other stuff, for those who don't know, like the shows are all free. We got a ton of them, including this one you're watching. Projections for all the major sports. Partnerships with the Solver and Line Star. For NFL, we're going to have projections ownership for everything. All the Showdown stuff we just showed you. All the main slate stuff. The stack rankings. The DVP. All that other stuff that goes with it. For other slates, we cover tiers, afternoon, and prime time. NBA is going on. Big Christmas Day slate for NBA. Going to have projections, ownership. They're different than the rest of the industry. We've talked about this all season, and even some of the best players in the world out there will tell you, you got to have projections, but you want good projections that are different. That's SHIPIT Nation. I know our other competitors that have been around longer have great projections, but a lot of people are already with them. Take a chance, try ours out, put them to use for yourself. Even if you just try it for a week, it's $24. All the other offerings, we cover Showdown if you can't be around your computer every 5 minutes or every half an hour for that. PGA coming back in just a couple of weeks. MMA is around year-round. It's not right now, but typically you're going to see it very often. NHL in full swing, really good NHL projections as well. MLB off right now, but then we also have the courses included. 4-hour NFL DFS process course, 2-hour NBA, and we just finished our 2-hour PGA one. So if you're looking to brush up for the season, we did the PGA edition of DFS Process 101, breaking down process as it relates to PGA, roster construction, the live finals, the Fantasy Golf World Championship, a completely different structure, getting into 3 rounds and getting all the way through. Tons of money to be made over the 45 events of the PGA season, 45 weeks worth of action with Showdown slates, and then the differences with round 4 and whatnot. So lots of good stuff going over on the nation. If you guys haven't yet done so, subscribe to this channel for free on your way out. That's going to do it for this one, guys. Happy holidays to everybody out there from Hoop, myself, the rest of the team at SHIPIT Nation. For Hoop, for myself, ToeTagginTambo. Let's ship it!